My name is Arijs Liepins. I'm the president of the Nebraska-Latvian Association here in Lincoln, and I'd like to say a few words in Latvian. Es sveicinu visus jūs, kas skatīsieties šo īso programmu. You want me to translate that?
Yes, please.
I greet everyone who is going to watch this short program. And I said it first in Latvian. The things that, as far as the patients, Latvian patients are concerned, being in the hospital, of course there's a lot of older Latvians here in Lincoln, and you will find Latvians in Bryan Hospital or maybe St. Elizabeth Hospital. And one thing that we might say that when you deal with the Latvians, don't ever say, "Are you a Russian?" Because everyone has older people have accent, and you automatically think that they come from Eastern Europe, and the first thing that comes to your mind is that we might be Russians. To Latvian, that is quite insulting, because over the centuries, the Russians have dominated the Latvian country and the Latvian people, and we have resentment towards this. Now, of course, Latvia is free. First time it was declared free in 1918, but then the Russians, Stalin and Hitler, had an agreement between them in 1939, and they divided Europe in two spheres. One was a Russian or the communist sphere, and the other one was Nazi sphere. And of course we fell under the Russians. When they came in and occupied, they treated us terribly with deportations, killings, and so on. So we have quite a resentment if someone calls us a Russian. Otherwise, I don't think there is much about Latvians that you might have to watch out, like some other nationalities have religious problems, or how you treat a man or how you treat a woman. To us, we are very much the same as Americans. So I don't think there is any problem. Now, I was also asked about Latvian foods. I'm not, I know the Latvian foods, but offhand I cannot really say that there's any great difference. There are, of course, some foods that in Latvia we can grow, and we cannot grow what you grow crops here in Nebraska, like for instance corn. The summers are too short, and so, but we have potatoes, we have all the different meats that you have, except maybe we deal more with sheep and hogs than you deal here in Nebraska, for instance. We raise cattle, but we don't have beef cattle, the high quality as you do here, and I hope that it will change in the future. As far as food is concerned, I think we use a lot of potatoes, and we also use, as far as grain is concerned, we use rye considerably, because we have rye bread, which is available here in Lincoln, but it is quite milder. And if you want a real Latvian rye bread, you have to buy sometimes from the Latvian ladies' auxiliaries, either from the church or Daugavas when they bake at the Latvian hall that is in the kitchen. That is a real Latvian rye bread. It's much heavier and much more coarse than the one you buy here in the general store, which is called rye bread. Also wheat and and of course we have a lot of vegetables in Latvia, and you try to store them out in the outdoor cellars, something similar to what we have in Nebraska, storm cellars, you know, to protect you against tornadoes nowadays. But it is so deep underground that you can protect them from freezing, and they are fresh up to the next spring almost. So as far as individual foods, one holiday that kind of stands out for the Latvians, it is Līgosvētki, which is on the 23rd, but then on the 24th it is Jāņu diena, or actually it is taken over somewhat from the Catholic Church, St. John's Day. And it is sometimes called a St. John's Day, but it has nothing to do with Christianity, because this holiday was celebrated centuries before the Latvians became Christians. And on this day, one of the main things as far as drinking is concerned, it is homemade beer. You drink a lot of homemade beer, and almost every farm produces its own homemade beer. And also another one is what is called the St. John's Day cheese. You can do it here in Nebraska. It is a little bit more difficult because the milk and the ingredients are somewhat different, but mainly it is cottage cheese, sour cream, buttermilk, and caraway seeds, and of course a lot of butter in there, but it has to be mixed in a certain procedure and certain ways, and then you have this St. John's Day cheese, which does not have one standard, but like last year when we had a St. John's Day celebration here in Lincoln, we had 8 different ones. Each lady that brought it, it's made in a kind of round, flattened wheel, or whatever you call it, and you slice it just like you slice a torte. I mean, from the center over, and it kind of forms a triangle when you eat it. Of course, in St. John's Day you eat a lot of other good things, but those are the 2 main ingredients, because the Latvians have a tradition on St. John's Day. You start at your home. You decorate your home with flowers, with birch tree branches or whole new trees, the outside, the inside. You use different either wildflowers or from your garden. And then when you have eaten a little bit, you go to your neighbors singing all the time St. John's Day Latvian folk songs, and those are by the thousands. And then when you visit your neighbors for a while, then they join you and you go to the next farm, and sometimes it takes might be about 5 or 6 different farms, and when they get together, then they build a bonfire, or else a fire that is on a long pole, and a keg filled with tar and other materials, wood materials, and then you light it, and it usually, if it is set right, it will go on for about 3-4 hours, or actually till about 3 o'clock in the morning, when in Latvia, because it's so far north, the sun rises around 2 o'clock in the morning in summertime. Of course, our days are a lot shorter than in Nebraska, but in summertime they are a lot longer. And Then, of course, we have other holidays, and each one has its own ingredients, or like I cannot tell you right now. You will have to ask some ladies. There is one holiday in the fall that you eat generally rooster. You kill a rooster and prepare it for the meal. Then also there's a couple like Christmas. It is definitely a hog. You kill a hog and you eat, including, you prepare even the head a certain way that certain parts of it can be eaten. But otherwise it is, fresh meat. Otherwise, of course, over the centuries, there was no refrigeration.
So, János Diana is around the 23rd and 24th of June,
right?
Correct?
Right.
Okay.
We started celebrating on the 23rd, actually.
Yeah.
And then we continued in the morning of 24th. And on 24th, anybody that has John's name, we will celebrate his name day on the 24th, and then you can go from house to house again wherever John is living. And in Latvia there's a lot of Johns.
So name days are another Latvian tradition as well.
It is another tradition for Latvia. We have a little bit more difficult than for the Americans. We just celebrate birthdays, but we have to celebrate also name days. In the United States, we have kind of dropped back because tradition is not general, it's only for Latvians, but in Latvia it's very strong. And how you distinguish those two? On your birthday, generally, with the exception of your relatives can drop in on your birthday, or if you invite your friends on your birthday. But on your name day, which is a certain calendar day, like I say, St. John's, John is on the 24th. My Arijs, my name day is on the 13th of January. I celebrate, and all Arijs in the United States and Latvia celebrate on that particular day. I don't celebrate too much, but some people do.
Other Latvian traditions are to put birch trees in your front yard.
Yes.
Do you know where that started, or?
I think it is. It started.
Is it like good luck, or?
It is for decorations, and since there's plenty of the birch trees, now they are trying to eliminate, limit it, because of, you actually killed a very good tree early, but we used to have a lot of forested areas, so we didn't mind. It was not, in fact, it was just like in Christmas time when you cut a Christmas tree. You would generally pick a tree that is good looking, but also close to another, or maybe a bunch of trees, and they would be crowding each other out. Same way with birch trees. You just don't cut the first one, but you kind of sort them out. I mean, so that they are, the others that remain behind will grow better.
For instance, you talked about the decorations that are done a lot during the holidays, and Latvians have a lot of specific decorations like the auseklis,
Yes.
for good luck. One of the other things I wanted to have you talk about a little bit was your process of getting acculturated, coming here to, first New York. Can you tell me just a little bit about that?
Well, when we came to New York, of course, I left Latvia in 1944 when the Russians were approaching the second time, and we went to Poland first, and then we went to Germany, and we ended up after the war in American sector. We lived in a DP camps, or displaced person camps, for 4.5 years. Then the Congress in the United States and other in England, and also in Australia, the parliaments and Canada, they started taking these refugees because we refused to go back home because we would be deported. So when we came to United States in 1949, in September the 17th, a few days ago, I came to New York. First of all, it was a shock to see the abundance of everything. The war had destroyed, especially Germany. There was hardly any food, anything to buy. It was getting better in 1949, but nothing comparing what we saw in New York or what we saw in North Carolina when we settled down there. We had a sponsor in North Carolina. We just couldn't come to the United States. We had to have a sponsor.
So, like a lot of cultures, you had to have a sponsor to be able to get here, and people came here for both because of the war and being displaced, but also then being able to find work was another big thing.
Right.
But
because
specifically from from that, isn't there another specific holiday memory day that Latvians celebrate?
well, we commemorate that particular day. That is on June the 14th. And in 1941, the Russians deported, in one night, they deported almost 16,000 Latvians in cattle cars. And that included not men, not politicians, not anything. It could be, generally it was educated people, but it could be the whole family. Occasionally it was part of the family. And we commemorate that day because most of these people never survived the Russian winters or the concentration camps, and they died soon after. Very few have returned back to Latvia to tell the grim stories, what happened to them. And they were just little children when they were deported. And now, of course, they are in their 80s or 90s. And so that is one of the commemoration day. And of course we commemorate on the 18th of November when in 1918, on the 18th of November, the Latvian independence was proclaimed, and Latvia became as a nation free, completely free from other dominations. But it lasted a very short time. Like I said, Hitler and Stalin divided Europe in two sections, and we of course lost our freedom in 1940 when the Russian tanks and huge army came in Latvia.
Before you said that going back to Latvia, you've noticed in terms of health problems for actual Latvians, where there used to never be any obesity, now there's actually greater obesity rates in Latvia because of the poor foods.
Well, yes. As a kid, I was 10 years old when I left Latvia in 1944, and actually in the country, as I remember, there was hardly any problem with obesity because people were working hard, either on the farms, or they were working in factories, or they were working in office. They were very active physically. Now, recently, last time I went to Latvia, I used to go there from 1992 up to 2005. I almost went there every year for starting with 4 weeks up to 2 months. And every year I noticed more and more people that have heavy weight and quite young yet. It's not only the older people, but one thing is alcohol is a problem possibly. Too much beer and other alcohol, not enough work. A lot of people have a same tendency that Latvians never had a tendency before, that nowadays if they don't like a job, they don't take it. If it's too heavy, too hard labor or something, and they rather receive unemployment. And then of course also, when you sit around the house you also gain weight probably, and you don't have the physical activities that you should have.
I think along with that, we've talked about how heart problems are another common issue with Latvians, as with many cultures. On a final note, I know that you being very active in the political community with Latvians, would you like to just tell us a little bit about the last elections that occurred?
Well, the last elections occurred last Saturday on the 17th. We were somewhat pleased with the results. There was 13 parties running. Only 5 got into the parliament. We have one house parliament. It's not like the United States, they have 2 houses, we have 1. Only 5, if your party exceeded 5% of the total vote, you could get your delegate in the parliament. And the problem right now is there is quite a strong Russian minority in Latvia that is constantly being pushed and subjugated to propaganda from Moscow to fight for their freedoms, and even so they have the same freedoms as in rest of European countries, because Latvia belongs to European Union, and so we have to. Our laws are the same as they are in Germany. I mean, not exactly, but otherwise they would not accept us in European Union if we did not have the similar laws. But the Russians right now, even with the 30% that they got, their party, are pushing for being having the prime minister or the dominance in the parliament. And if it happens, then goodbye European Union, because Latvia will be dragged into influence by Russia, just like in Second World War. Before Second World War, Germany was fighting for influence between different European countries, either communist or Nazi. And this is what we don't want, and what we are afraid of, what is happening in Latvia. And West Europeans and the United States don't seem to understand the critical stage in Latvia. They should be supporting the Latvians as an independent country that is, and since the Latvians are also in NATO, it would be very critical that we don't have the Russian influence, because it would endanger also the NATO if one of the members is influenced by a foreign power that doesn't belong to NATO.
On a positive note, would you like to give us a nice goodbye greeting in Latvian language again, please?
Es ceru, kad jūs mani sapratīsat, ko es mēģināju teikt, un es ceru, ka es jūs negarlaikoju pa daudz. I hope that you understood what I was trying to say, and I hope that it was not too boring and that you will not fall asleep while this presentation is taking place.
Arijs, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.